Hey, it's that Deadeye guy. We've been waiting for a new Diablo game for years now. With each passing BlizzCon and each passing disappointment to fans of the series, there hasn't been much hope that we'll return to Sanctuary again anytime soon. However, Blizzard has recently had several job postings for the Diablo team, and news just came out regarding a new Diablo animated series on Netflix. On top of that, there's some curious time slots for various Diablo-related panels at this year's BlizzCon. There just might be some hope for a new title in this series after all. With this video, I'm going to talk a bit about what I would want to see in Diablo 4, taking only the best pieces of the previous 3 titles and capitalizing on what made Diablo a great series in the first place. In Diablo 1 and 2, the characters you could play weren't special. They had various backgrounds that allowed them to go into battle against the minions of hell, but at the end of the day, they were just human. From the beginning of the first 2 games, you had a laughably small set of abilities and had to struggle mightily to unlock new skills, or in the case of the original warrior, acquire just better and better gear. Diablo 3 made the player characters almost demigods with the introduction of the Nephilim, and it shows in the gameplay. From the first act until the final battle, you're dismissing waves of demonic hordes with fantastic looking powers and abilities. You really have to crank up the difficulty even at the very beginning to see any kind of meaningful resistance from enemies. Playing on normal is a cakewalk. There's also no fear of any kind of loss, a powerful motivator if used correctly. Sure, there's hardcore mode where dying characters stay dead forever, but that's just an added tweak if people want to play it. It's not fully baked into the game as a primary gameplay mode. I'm not saying make permadeath standard, but Diablo 3 suffers hard from the death is meaningless syndrome. This combined with how absurdly powerful the player characters are, even from the very beginning, really hurt the game feel in the long run. In the first game, the first several levels of the Tristram Cathedral don't throw hordes of creatures at you, because even the few you have to fight can easily kill you if you aren't careful. Each one of those early areas are a struggle, especially for an inexperienced player. Even once you reach the catacombs and you've become a little bit more confident in your hero, the numbers and strength of the creatures you face there begins to ramp up to the point where there's still imminent death lurking around each corner. This danger never lets up through the entire game. Blizzard tries a little bit too hard to make things epic and ends up shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to story writing. I lost all faith in them in this regard after they made Kerrigan a space angel, turning StarCraft into the longest running bait-and-switch anime in existence. Point here is, not everything has to be universe-altering when it involves the player. It's okay to be a small piece in a big world. The internal conflict between heaven and hell is a great setting to tell a vast number of stories. Diablo 3 plopped the player right on top of it all, and had us altering absolutely everything lore-wise as we moved from area to area, frantically clicking on every box, barrel, and chest that came within arm's reach. I know it's a meme, but I have to do it because it's probably the most well-known example of the feel that I want Diablo to have again. Dark Souls plopped you into the boots of a freshly raised Deadite in the Kingdom of Lordran. Throughout the whole game, it's very obvious that you are a lone struggler, inching ever closer to your final battle with the Lord of Cinder. While the results of that and other boss battles do have implications and consequences when it comes to the world around you, you don't have your face shoved in it. It's subtle. It keeps the tone of making sure you know that this place sucks, filled with sucky people, and you're going to be ever drudging up a really tall hill until you reach the end. Players like that tone. It's a challenge, it's interesting, and Diablo is a perfect series for that tone. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The original Diablo is a horror game with RPG elements. You go wandering into the Tristram Cathedral with nothing but a short sword to protect yourself from whatever you might encounter. The gruesome sight of the mauled townsmen sets the stage for what you're going to see down below. The gothic designs only add to the dread of descending into the darkness, with knowledge that there's a demon known as the Butcher waiting for you just 2 levels down. And I mean, come on, who wasn't terrified the first time you opened that dude's door and he came sprinting at you with his iconic line? Oh god! It's not just the gore that made Diablo 1 and 2 scary and Diablo 3 not scary. All of these games had plenty of blood and guts, but I think the combination of the music and the softer art style of 3 made it hard to take it too seriously. The demonic creatures looked more sinister in the previous games, and not because they suffer from the ugly sprites of being older games. I'm convinced the monster designers of the first title went about their work aiming to make horrific creatures that you would see in a scary movie, rather than simply making baddies to put into a video game. The softness and the styles of the creatures feel like they'd be more at home in an MMO than something that is supposed to be fairly scary. In fact, that's exactly how I would describe Diablo 3 in-game art direction. World of Warcraft's edgy cousin. There's not much of a sense of dread in the musical tone in the third game either. This makes a huge difference in the overall feel of the game. I'm sure I don't need to expand upon the importance of a video game's score. Listen to these clips of the main themes from the first 2 games. Now listen to the main theme of Diablo 3. Notice the massive tonal difference here? The first two are ominous and foreboding. They make you feel like your character is about to descend into madness as you begin your game. The third is far less ominous and a whole lot more epic and grandiose. This isn't a bad thing, but it's a far cry from its predecessors. In my opinion, was a change made not for the better. One thing I hope Blizzard does not do with future Diablo titles is to soften up the edges on them like they did with 3. I've already pointed out that it looks very Warcrafty in its in-game design. They cracked jokes early in development and put in Whimsyshire as a tongue-in-cheek level response to all of the early criticisms that it wasn't gothic or dark enough. While I'm sure they got a good laugh out of it, the criticisms turned out to be absolutely correct. Whimsyshire doesn't feel out of place in Diablo 3. At all. It absolutely would be if it were in prior 2 games. You know a game that absolutely nails dark themes and had a significantly lower budget? Darkest Dungeon. That is a game that, despite fairly simple gameplay, utilized the terror from the Lovecraftian style to the absolute maximum. The art direction is sharp and stylized almost like a mature comic book. The music complements the stressful gameplay, constantly reminding the player that their heroes could be killed at any moment should a stroke of bad luck befall them. The voice of the ancestor, chronicling your few successes and many failures, is just the cherry on top. Blizzard needs to seriously consider taking some pointers from Red Hook Studios on how to make a game truly dark. Isometric action RPGs are very hard to monetize on a massive scale. The whole draw of the game after completing the main storyline is grinding for gear and continuing to build up your character. That means you've got to put a shitload of equipment in your game to keep players logging in. Well, if you have a vast library of items, that means cosmetics won't mean quite as much. Players already have plenty of things to put on their characters without having to drop additional real-world money on them. So how else do you monetize Diablo? Well, Blizzard's answer was the real money auction house when Diablo 3 first launched. This allowed players to buy and sell items with real dollars, while Blizzard takes a little cut off the top. The player base correctly identified it as a skeezy feature that could be abused, and it was pulled sometime later. "Well, we tried," some dev on the Diablo team probably said to the business development executive. "There's not really going to be a good way to monetize Diablo after the initial purchase is made. Selling functional, non-cosmetic gear that actually affects the game will draw the ire of the player base as it would be literally pay to win. The only other way I can see Blizzard getting their cut is if they implement a subscription-based service to be able to access multiplayer Battle.net with Diablo. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if they actually did it. It would help with the cost of maintaining the game servers and be a good business case for continuing to push out content to keep players engaged. Whatever they do, the business folks at Blizzard and Daddy Activision need to stay far the hell away from the Diablo team. I know they won't, they literally wouldn't be doing their jobs. But I want to stress that in the age of free-to-play, loot boxes, and microtransactions, Diablo just isn't the kind of game that can easily implement this. I hope the suits can recognize that it's okay for the Diablo IP to be smaller and more niche and cater to a more mature audience. This series is one of the main reasons that Blizzard obtained the reputation that they have. I mean, come on. Blizzard already has the market cornered in the MMO space with WoW, the competitive RTS space with StarCraft 2, the online TCG space with Hearthstone, and the MOBA space with never mind. Look, after initial launch sales, Diablo probably isn't going to become a heavy revenue stream for the company, and that's okay. Maybe float that $5 monthly fee for multiplayer access, or I don't know, come up with something new. Whatever you do, make damn sure that whatever you come up with isn't going to piss off the player base. Diablo fans have been waiting a long damn time for a new Diablo title, and what we absolutely do not want is to be nickel and dime to death because of how cancerous the push to video games as a service is becoming. At the end of the day, I'm still a massive fan of the series. I grew up with it. It has had a massive effect on my attitudes and experiences in video games. Even though I threw out a lot of criticism of the third title, it is still by far the most solid and enjoyable with the deepest ocean of content available. I still come back to it occasionally for the new seasons and to check out the new content that's been released. Still, I think any potential Diablo 4 needs to return to its roots: horror and dread. I want to feel on edge when I first fire up the next game. I'm a player, not a game designer. I've tried to put out my thoughts on how to make the next Diablo game great, but it's up to Blizzard to figure out how they're actually going to execute it. I'm willing to forgive them for that anime ending for StarCraft 2 if they can just get Diablo 4, or whatever the next title is going to be, right. I have faith that Blizzard still has some of that magic left. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, I'd appreciate if you hit that thumbs up button and maybe even subscribe with notifications to stay up to date with the channel. Until next time.